The sun just set in New Algiers, formerly known as Paris. You know what things are like over there now, probably, if you've paid minimal attention. The topic, and it's appropriate that I'm doing a sunset report right now based on the time of the sunset in Paris. Either that, or you may see it as just me wanting to do something else a little bit after 8 or right before then, when the sun is setting closer to where I am in greater Daytona Beach, Florida. Maybe I'll even get to the beach today. It's been quite a few days. Yeah, and the water's quite pleasant. I'm talking about an article by someone named Jim Goad, who writes for Tackies magazine, which you can find at Takimag. Good, probably alt-right in the real sense, source for a lot of good information. Tends to attract, I'm just warning you, some people who don't like the Jews all that much in the comments section. So be it. I filter the comments anyway. But there are some good writers there. Gavin McInnes, Jim Goad, Pat Buchanan's stuff appears there, among other places. Full disclosure, 45 years old, no children, though I have been married and did try to have children there. Not going to get into that. So there is the element of hypocrisy, but I'm trying to actually have descendants. I will remind you, you should check out some of the links. You should listen to Backlash, which I host on Shark Nation Radio. The interview I did with Diamond and Silk yesterday was particularly fun. I have links to the whole interview as well as some highlights up there. Let's get into now what Jim Goad wrote. He's the author, by the way, of the Redneck Manifesto, which I haven't read, but good title. And you can find him at Jim Goad, JimGoad on Twitter. And I'm not going to read you all of this, little bits and pieces. I'm moving away from reading you the whole thing, so you'll at least feel a little more obligated to go to the actual links and give traffic to the site where it was published. Here's how Jim Goad starts with, what's it called once more? The Genetic Dead Ends Who Rule Europe. Basically, the theme is he's making us aware of the childlessness of the leaders of so many countries in Western Europe, and what that says about the continent and its future. Okay, he starts. When France decided to slit its own throat last week and elect the childless Emmanuel Macron as its president over the bustier and more fecund means fertile, fun word, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Marine Le Pen, it made him the 9th current European leader whose loins have borne no fruit. More for full disclosure beyond me, George Washington was childless as well. In addition to France, childless men and barren women currently rule Italy, Germany, the UK, Scotland, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Jean-Claude Juncker, of course, you could say that the EU really rules all those countries, so no one's really ruling those countries who was just mentioned. Jean-Claude Juncker, president of the European Commission, has likewise never fathered nor raised a seedling. And it's not as if he has a face, and he puts lots of great links in here, by the way. And it's not as if he has a face that inspires female lubrication, so it'd be an uphill climb for him under any circumstances. I see Rabbi Baruch Wolf has joined this conversation. He's out there on the Queens-Long Island border. He joins a lot of stuff. I don't know him. I don't know if he has a lot of kids, but he's a Chabad rabbi. And one thing I can tell you, in contrast to Europe, is how fertile Chabad, Lubavitcher Jews in particular are. Orthodox Jews in general, but particularly the Lubavitchers and the Hasidic in general. It's just interesting seeing his name as I get into this because, hey, I guess they want to build descendants for the future. I'm off on a tangent. Okay. At this point, Jim Goad continues, the 39-year-old Macron will likely never become a father. Then I said I'm not going to read you all of this. I'm skipping some kind of gynecological details or thoughts about Madame Macron, who's 64 years old. Some of you may be eating. I just don't want to get into that right now. Skipping forward in the article. Days before Macron debated Le Pen on French TV, Le Pen's father told a crowd, he talks to us about the future, but he doesn't have children. The elder Le Pen described his own vision of France as, quote, a past from where we come, and without which we would not have existed biologically, physically, morally, or spiritually. Responding to Le Pen's comments, Macron said, Mr. Le Pen told me, you don't have the right to talk about the future because you don't have children. Mr. Le Pen, I have children and grandchildren of the heart. I'm just making up a voice here. It's a family that you have to build. It's a family you have to conquer. A family that doesn't owe you anything and that you will never have. In other words, Jim Goad writes, it's a family that doesn't really exist. During the campaign, he continues, Marine Le Pen accused Macron of being the lapdog of Angela Merkel, the former communist and nude sunbather who has never given birth, but has handed over Europe to be killed. Under Merkel's frumpy rule, Germany can currently claim the dubious bragging right of being the nation with the highest quotient of childless women in the world. Interesting. I thought Italy and Spain were actually lower in terms of population, in terms of women, or maybe native European women giving birth out of 1,000 people. I don't know. But I thought they were actually a little less fertile there. And of course, the statistics are thrown off by when you add the Muslims there, who are often having 7 or 8 kids and going on welfare. Okay. Germany can currently claim the dubious bragging right of being the nation with the highest quotient of childless women in the world. An estimated 30% of German women have spawned no offspring. Among female college graduates, it's 40%. Current UK Prime Minister Theresa May, he continues by talking about how she actually tried but was unsuccessful in having kids with her husband, who is a man. Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, she gave up after having a miscarriage. He then writes about Italian Prime Minister Paolo Gentiloni, and he writes, who looks like Merkel with maybe a half shot of testosterone and without the Grecian formula. He's childless too. And then he quotes the latest results from a highly unscientific online poll in which 100% of respondents think that the Prime Minister of Italy is gay. Others, Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven is childless as well. And then Goad writes, I cannot confirm whether or not Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte is gay or not, but look at the picture and tell me he isn't. And there's a link there. And what he says he can confirm is that a woman has never carried his sperm to term. Luxembourg's Prime Minister Xavier Bettel is, as Goad writes, gay as a French sprig of mistletoe pinned to a red velvet winter's vest. Well, I'm guessing he's probably an atheist despite the Christmasness of that reference. Then Goad gets into this. In stark contrast to the gaggle of unfruitful fruits who currently rule Western Europe, Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Viktor Orban, that's the leader of Hungary, which very controversially has been very against Muslim refugees coming in, they form a triumvirate of evil for anyone dumb enough to believe globalism's a good thing. And he continues, they have graced the planet with a dozen children between them. 5 from Trump. I don't know the breakdown of the 7, how many of the 7 are Putin's and how many are Orban's. But they've graced the planet with a dozen children between them, which will undoubtedly lead to climate change and starvation in Africa, which will then force 100 million or so African refugees northward in search of freedom, social justice, and a better life. Speaking of climate change, in Africa, 24 out of the 25 nations on Earth with the highest birth rates all come from that vibrant and prosperous continent. I remember back in the 1970s when ZPG, zero population growth, was a huge plank in the leftist platform, a plank that was slowly and silently withdrawn when people started realizing it would be racist in quotation marks, to notice where all the population growth was occurring. Africa and probably to some extent Asia, Latin America, and the Arab world for sure. So instead of trying to squash population growth in the areas where it actually needs squashing, the left has changed strategies and is cheering for demographic extinction in European nations where the indigenous population isn't even breeding at replacement levels. And by the way, that's in strong contrast to Israel, where even the secular people, the non-religious ones, are reproducing in well above replacement levels. The religious people are certainly producing well above, much comfortably well above population levels. That way, they can bring in all those prodigiously breeding, non-racist brown people, and harmony will finally be achieved. Under monarchy, it was assumed that a nation's leaders descended from well-established bloodlines. Even in the preamble to the U.S. Constitution, it was understood that a nation was something to be preserved for one's posterity. The word posterity in quotes, and he explains what it means, really meaning posterity is children, grandchildren, and so on. Yeah. Well, you can read the end yourself, and I think I've given you enough hints that you can get the point and also be inspired to read the link, so you see the parts you missed. I will, for those of you who follow the NFL, someone who does not have the mentality of European leaders, this is a news story that just came out in the last couple days. Remember a guy named Antonio Cromartie? He had, I think like 5 years ago, it was reported that he had 9 kids with 8 women or something. He was a cornerback for the New York Jets, and I think he's done playing at the age of 33. He didn't make it with the Indianapolis Colts last year. He was part of a reality show. I mean, he probably needs to do a reality show. Most recently, he was in the news outside of football for having a vasectomy and then still fathering twins with one of his baby mamas whom he married. And she's pregnant again despite the fact that he supposedly had a vasectomy. And this will be his 14th kid. I think maybe it's 8, 9 different women. I don't know. But he's quite a contrast to the leaders of Europe. And I mentioned the part I was going to say about Jews and Israel, especially religious Jews. Total contrast to Europe. Despite being a Western, sort of Western, I don't know if you want to consider Jews white, especially Sephardic Jews, but so be it. The Jews in Israel are, ironically enough, quite a contrast, birthwise to the Germans in Germany. Read into that what you will. Some stuff from the comment section, and there's a lot of worthwhile stuff there, and I suggest you look at it. They remain in denial. This is a huge problem in Europe, but they will tell you it's a feature, not a bug. And the response to that is they are conditioned under a pall of thick political media delivered indoctrination. And another response, the good news is that it won't be a problem for much longer. In other words, white Europe, rest in peace, or at least white Western Europe. It may be a slightly different mentality in Poland. Another comment, these leaders are quintessentially cucked. They expend their life's energy on behalf of people who hate them. And the culture that created the societies these semi-literate beings are now flooding. Not having children is bad enough, but really, must they slavishly kiss the boots of the savages whom they've chosen to make their masters? Another comment. Despite the factor of their not caring since they have no children, there are elements of sadism and daddy issues that they would inflict the African continent and Muslims on future Europeans. Then someone asks a question a little later on. Has this any time, anywhere in history happened before? A response to that. Not in this manner, no. It is because through birth control, voluntary sterilization, and widely available abortion, we have almost totally separated sex from procreation. This particular sort of demographic decline was not possible before the modern age. As for some sort of voluntary replacement brought about by the ruling elite, it's somewhat similar to the fall of Rome, though the comparison may be insulting to the German tribes which took over after the Roman elite cucked out. And in response to that, yes, the Romans got soft. It took many centuries, though, didn't it? My mother always said, from wooden shoes to wooden Jews in 3 generations. And another comment. Charlie Hebdo, that's the French satire newspaper where they had the mass shooting, maybe 2.5 years ago? Charlie Hebdo got Macron right, maybe 3.5 years ago by now. No, I think it's more like 2.5. And then there's a link to what Charlie Hebdo published. It was a cartoon of Emmanuel Macron's wife pregnant with the caption, "He will do miracles." He writes about Macron and his wife. She is robbing the cradle. He is robbing the grave. The response is, should have been readily apparent this guy was gay. Older woman marriage and all. Not that there is anything wrong with that, right? That's a quote from Seinfeld, of course. A response to that. My first reaction when I saw them as a couple was the guy was just creepy. Keep your sons and daughters and mom away from this perv. And another response, he will soon be robbing France for his globalist masters. Another comment, just a little bit more. The hands that have never rocked a cradle rule the demise of Western civilization. Response. The pill, legal abortion, homosexuality, and selfish men and women have destroyed Western civilization. I am just about to pass the break-even point with my descendants. My kids are the exception to the rule. For 3 generations since the 60s, women are below reproduction rates in the USA and Europe, as well as in most of East Asia. Yeah, Japan has demographic problems, a low fertility rate similar to that of Europe, and they really don't let any immigrants in. I don't know who's going to pay for their benefits because people live a fairly old age there. I don't know what they do in the future. But he continues, God told us to be fruitful and multiply. Those, in fact, he told Adam, which is a bigger hint to me than to most. Those societies that don't will vanish from the earth. Great job, Jim. And Jim, of course, is Jim Goad, who wrote the piece which I started by reading. And then 2 more comments. The EU Illuminists have recruited a brigade of sterile drones to stand as role model to the self-actuated genocide of indigenous Europe. And the final comment, appropriate that this would be the final one. I am pretty sure that this is to Jim Goad, I am pretty sure that you've just delivered the definitive word on the subject. Mic drop to Go Ghetto. All right, I've said a few times now, I am not trying to do the cute endings. I'm just going to walk off.